Hello there, Geeks and Gamers. I'm MarcTheCyborg, and being one of the few Canadians on the Geeks and Gamers team, I was able to go see Tenet this week. While I will certainly let you know before I'm going to discuss major spoilers, this is the kind of movie where you might want to go in totally cold, so be warned. You may learn more than you'd want to know going in. Christopher Nolan is an incredible filmmaker. That is absolutely undeniable. While The Dark Knight Rises and Interstellar certainly aren't without their logic gaps, the caliber of filmmaking on display is clear. He insists on using practical methods for visual effects whenever possible, and has enough clout that Hollywood gives him the budget he needs to do so, and Tenet is no exception in that regard. The stunt sequences in this film are absolutely incredible. At times the cuts are a bit quick for my personal taste, but the geography of the fight scenes is usually pretty clear, so you don't get disoriented and can always tell what's going on. Where the action falters is in its brutality, and this really isn't the fault of the film. I blame the rating. I suppose it's the aforementioned massive budgets which Nolan is able to acquire that prevent him from making R-rated films, but in Tenet, as well as his previous film Dunkirk, this really hurts. Tenet is not a film for kids. Brutal things are happening on a pretty regular basis, such as a character's teeth getting torn out with pliers, or a visceral fight scene in a restaurant kitchen, but the constant cutaways and lack of blood definitely hurt the impact these moments would otherwise have. Considering how complicated the plot, or even just the premise, are, I honestly don't think there are going to be a lot of preteens who are lining up at the theater to see this, and while it wouldn't make the film perfect, an R rating would certainly have given the action a bit more weight. With that said, the action is still good, the 70mm IMAX format they shot in is stunning, and the climactic, time-bending war movie-like battle is probably one of the most impressive sequences I've ever seen. The performances are pretty solid across the board, with John David Washington proving he inherited a fair amount of his dad's talent. Although to be fair, I only learned that he was Denzel Washington's kid after I saw the movie, so I wasn't thinking that while I was watching, but when I found out, it made sense. He's good. I was particularly impressed by the physicality he demonstrates in the action sequences. Similar to the performance Henry Cavill gives as Geralt of Rivia in The Witcher, Washington is dead set on giving his stuntman an easy job by doing what seems like everything on his own. Robert Pattinson is also very convincing, and while this won't be the movie which will convince you he'll be a good Batman, the charisma he displays is hard to deny, and he has great chemistry with Washington. Elizabeth Debicki, which I might be pronouncing totally wrong, was a new name to me, and while she was almost uncomfortably tall, thus intimidating me as a shortman, her performance induces a lot of sympathy, and her striking beauty makes her a great leading lady. I was less impressed with Kenneth Branagh's villain character, Sator. While Branagh is extremely talented, either he or Nolan's choice to have him burst out into rage-fueled yelling had the opposite of the intended effect on me. Rather than make him scary and intimidating, it made him feel cartoony. Part of what made Ledger's Joker in The Dark Knight, or even Hardy's Bane in Dark Knight Rises so effective, is that they were cool as ice for the vast majority of the time they were on screen.
Alright, so listen, why don't you give me a call when you want to start taking things a little more seriously? Here's my card.
I've paid you a small fortune.
This gives you power over me?
What is this?
Your money and infrastructure have been important. Till now.
What are you?
I'm Gotham's reckoning.
Even without changing a word in the script, Branagh could have been much scarier if the intimidation was coming from the look in his eye rather than the volume of his voice. There were several solid supporting performances, with Aaron Taylor-Johnson, Himesh Patel, and Dimple Kapadia being notably strong, and even some great cameos from the likes of Michael Caine, Martin Donovan, and Clemence Posey. None of them will knock your socks off, but they're all very sufficient backup to the main cast. But can all the great special effects, solid performances, and master-tier film craft in the world make a movie good if the script isn't up to the task? The short answer is maybe, as while on single viewing and with no ability to pause or take notes, there are certainly aspects of the script which seemed off, but with that said, I enjoyed the hell out of the movie. So if you want to see the film, I can confidently say that your ticket price will feel warranted and you will probably have a great time. But if I'm going to talk about the story, we've got to get into spoiler territory. I won't spoil any major plot twists, but I need to open Pandora's box for at least a peek if I'm going to tell you anything at all about the premise. Final warning. Spoiler time, baby. The premise of Tenet isn't clear from the trailers, which is why me saying nearly anything at all about it could be considered a spoiler. In the future, a scientist has discovered the ability to reverse the direction of an object's chronological entropy. What this means is that while we travel forward through time, this technology manages to invert an object so that it moves backwards through time. People can be inverted as well, which reverses everything about how physics is applied to them. You freeze if you're on fire, feel wind at your back while running forward, and have to wear a breathing mask as you now inhale CO2 and exhale oxygen. This is initially described in a sequence where Posey's character teaches the protagonist, which is the only thing that Washington's character is ever referred to as, how to manipulate inverted bullets by dropping them on a table and picking them back up, shooting them backwards from the wall, and appearing to catch them in his pistol. This sequence does not entirely make sense to me at this time, and I think Nolan knew this would happen, as he does have Posey quite directly say,
"Don't try to understand it. Feel it."
which is kinda similar to how Rian Johnson has Bruce Willis dispel logic discussions in his film Looper, which admittedly I enjoyed, but that was before I knew Rian Johnson would take a scythe to my favorite franchise shortly after.
You know what's gonna happen? You done all this already? As me?
I don't want to talk about time travel shit. Because if we start talking about it, then we're going to be here all day talking about it, making diagrams with straws. It doesn't
When I
matter.
hurt myself, it changes your body. So is what I do now change your memory? It doesn't matter!
This can be effective, but while having a character effectively tell the audience don't think about it can focus them on the events at hand rather than the mechanics, it also sort of admits that the mechanics are probably not very solid. Luckily, Nolan does appear to subscribe to the original Terminator's concept of time travel, with a closed loop. Despite the complex threads which weave through Tenet, sending multiple versions of multiple characters into interactions with themselves from various perspectives, it evens out as this person always went back and always has to. Closed-loop time travel has always made more sense to me, but anytime you introduce time travel into a story, you've got to be very careful as there are bound to be holes in logic, and while I haven't quite finished my Tenet yarn board, I have a feeling that there are a lot of things which will not make sense if I start digging. The pace of the movie is very fast, taking the protagonist on a globe-spanning mission which keeps the audience on their toes, possibly so we don't have time to sit and dig into the details, but the downside is that this made the story feel very convoluted, time travel aside. We learned that the scientist who invented the time inversion created a device called the algorithm, which was broken up and scattered through time. Branagh's character is trying to find it. He may want to use it to threaten a chronological apocalypse, quite literally the end of time. And to get close to him, we attempt to get close to his wife, who's being blackmailed over an art forgery, so Washington and Pattinson try to steal the forgery and end up finding a time inversion machine, and then they have to find some plutonium and...
Oh no, I've gone cross-eyed.
I suggest you don't worry about this sort of thing and just enjoy yourself. That goes for you all, too.
Yes.
Like I said, yarn board required. I don't want to dig too much further into it without the ability to watch it for references, and movie reviews aren't really my thing, so I'll wrap it up here. I still do think you should go see the movie if you have any interest in it, as it is certainly an engaging and entertaining film, but be prepared for a complex web of time travel and subplots, which quite possibly don't make any sense at all. Once again, I'm MarcTheCyborg, and if you want to see more from me and you play video games, subscribe to Gaming with Geeks, where I make game review videos and do a weekly podcast every Saturday with Ryan Kinnell, Lethal Lightning, and Bossman Jeremy. Now watch this video again in reverse, it's the only way to be sure.